What's up, everybody? Welcome into Group Chat Football Live. I'm Peter Ariz alongside D Money. And today we are talking about the top 5 off seasons in the SEC. And what do we mean by that? Look, of course, there's a ton that goes into an off season, right? Players develop, they get bigger, stronger, faster. There's new coaches that come in. But today we are specifically talking about talent acquisition. And that means transfer portal, recruiting classes, which programs and rosters really improved this offseason.
Yeah, the dust has settled a little bit, so now it's time to kind of reflect. It's a lot when there's names coming in every day. It's hard to kind of really see the big picture. So now you see both portal and high school recruiting, because that's a big part of the offseason as well, especially with kids contributing earlier than ever. You look at the national championship game. I would say Jeremiah Smith is a big part of the present, not just the future. SEC, you're talking about Ryan Williams. So these are guys that are going to impact the present as well as the future. And then the portal guys, obviously, poised to make a huge impact and taking some of these SEC teams, with not all of which were great last year, to a higher level.
So we'll start with the 5th team in our rankings here. We'll go 5 all the way up to number 1. And that is Alabama, coming in with the number 2 recruiting class in the country, headlined by Keelan Russell at the quarterback spot. We did a whole video, Alabama fans, if you're looking for that, a whole video on the quarterback situation there, which we're very high on Keelan Russell. So we really went in depth on the QB situation there. But number 2 recruiting class in the country is instantly has to put you in the top 5 here.
Yeah, this is definitely more of a high school-oriented offseason than portal. You look at the portal, and we just start there if we're going to high school. You didn't add a ton of instant impact guys on paper. And maybe you didn't need to because you trust your young talent. But you did, it wasn't a huge portal class like your neighbors there in Auburn. But you talk about Isaiah Horton, the wide receiver from Miami, a guy that we saw basically his entire career as he developed into a really, really high caliber player for the nation's number 1 offense this year. Made a lot of big catches, originally from Tennessee, big bodied 6'4" receiver, has some more dynamic ability. I think he showed at Miami getting down the field. So he's someone to keep an eye on. I think he has more than he's shown, but to this point, he's certainly shown, that he'll be a consistent guy on slants and things like that. You got Jeremy Bernard, you got Ryan Williams. That's going to be, in my opinion, as good as any receiving core in the SEC, if not the country. Horton is going to improve that group immediately. Cameron Calhoun, guy originally from the Midwest, goes out to Utah, makes plays as a young player, has multiple years of eligibility. There he is from Cincinnati, Ohio, multiple years of eligibility. So he's a guy that can grow with a very, very young, very talented secondary. Obviously, this is a guy who's not afraid of competition, jumping in this mix with how good Alabama is in the secondary. But I think in the portal, if you look at the whole, I think Alabama probably lost more than they gained portal-wise. Talk about the Justice Haynes of the world. Elijah Pritchett, not necessarily somebody who, has put it all together, but someone who's played a lot of football for Alabama in recent years.
And you don't like to lose talented offensive linemen who still have multiple years of eligibility.
Right. And, I just think overall, when you just really size up what left and what came in, you lost more than you gained. A guy like Otis, who went to Colorado, big, huge, athletic guy, not necessarily, a first rounder like Payne or Allen or Quinn Williams, right? Or the guys you've seen over the years, but somebody with a body type and some experience. So that's not someone that you're dying to lose. Caleb Odom, a guy who went to Ole Miss, a team that's becoming a rival in the conference, or at least a competitor in the conference. 6'5", 230, tight end receiver hybrid, a lot of upside there, multiple years of eligibility. So I think overall with Alabama, the people you lost, in my opinion, are more impactful than what you brought in, but you brought in some good players. And then high school wise, absolutely outstanding. And right here, we're watching Ivan Taylor from Orlando. What jumped out to me about Alabama's high school class, Pete, didn't do anything really in the state of Alabama, almost ceded that to Auburn this year and other schools like Oregon. But you watch what they did nationally. This is Central Florida. This is one of the most hotly contested areas in the Southeast. You got, Florida, Florida State, Miami, and then, of course, all the SEC and ACC schools. To go in there and grab a guy like Ivan Taylor, look at the ball hawking ability. Orlando's been a hotbed of safeties. Just think about Kirby Joseph, who's been really, really productive at the NFL level from this area. You look at just the state of Florida in general. Last year, getting Mincy from Daytona Beach, going to Alabama. He played a little bit as a true freshman. So Alabama is making more inroads in Florida. You talked about Keelan Russell. I think is the best quarterback in the class. Quarterback from Dallas, Texas. Michael Carroll, absolute freak of nature. Interior offensive lineman from Philadelphia, former lacrosse player and wrestler. Really, really talented 5-star player. Dijon Lee, long, lanky corner from Southern California. Loved what he did in the Under Armour game. Jackson Lloyd from Central Coast, California. So all over the country, you're grabbing guys, including the guy we're looking at here, Ivan Taylor, who I think is going to be an impactful player in their secondary, which is becoming probably the best young secondary compilation of talent in the country.
Yeah, so obviously a big year too for Coach DeBoer and his staff, looking to rebound somewhat. Obviously, they were still very much in the mix there for the playoff at the end of the season, but need to improve upon that as the standard. We understand what it is there. So that lands them at 5th on our list here for top off seasons in the SEC. Going to number 4, Texas A&M, a program that was really aggressive at certain spots in the transfer portal.
Yeah, I think in the portal and high school recruiting, what you see is size, length and size. And then in terms of the portal, adding some speed. So let's just start with some guys we like in the high school class. So I think you do see this theme of size and length. Number 9 high school class in the country, the jewel of the class, Lamont Rogers, 6'6", 325 pounds, out of Dallas, Texas. Big offensive tackle. I mean, this is watching some highlights here from this season, his senior year. It's very easy to see the physical traits of this player. Texas A&M is a program that's put a lot of, look at the last 10 years. Texas A&M has put a lot of offensive linemen in the pros. This is someone they hope to develop into the next one. Fought off some stiff competition to land him, but really this is not an undersized player who's overachieving. This is a big dude who can wash people down the line. As you see here, look at the finish. I mean, he took him about 60 yards on that play. It has some athleticism, but really to me, I mean, just look at him. It's not hard to figure out which one he is when you turn on the tape. Still, the athleticism, I think, is more of a road grader certainly at this time, but that plays in the SEC. And a team like Texas A&M is going to want to play good defense, going to want to run the ball. You have a running quarterback right now who's developing as a passer. Someone like this is going to clear the way for his backs and allow him to get that play action passing game going, because you bring in guys like this, you're looking to road grade.
Yeah, and I think, look, he's the sort of guy that when that baby fat comes off, hopefully in his first couple months in the weight program and nutrition, getting it where it needs to be. Some of that, look at this athletic skill set here, catching the throwback there, the tackle throwback, and he's showing it off. But no, I think that definitely you'll see really what he's made of once he gets his body in tip-top shape.
Yeah, and that theme of length, you kind of see it throughout this class in high school. You got Jerome Miles, 5-star receiver out of Utah. Yes, the 10.3, 600 meters is kind of the star of the show, that pure speed, but he's also 6'3", 215. Coyote Armstrong, tight end out of East Texas, close to the Louisiana border, Jasper, Texas, 6'5", 265. Maybe he grows into a tackle. Maybe he stays at tight end, but he's a big boy. Maybe he's like a Darnell Washington, who was basically your 6th tackle playing tight end for Georgia and now the Pittsburgh Steelers. So they add a lot of size there, along with some big-time speed with Jerome Miles. And you see the same thing in the portal. Number 10 portal class, the receivers are the star of the show, as you see right there on the list. KC Concepcion, Micah Hudson, Noah Thomas, different kinds of receivers. Oh, Mario Craver, of course. Sorry. Noah Thomas on the way out. Yeah. Mario Craver on the way in.
And Micah Hudson not with the team right now.
But the reports are, it looks like he could be coming back. Yeah. That's still an unclear situation. 5-star player from Texas Tech. Mario Craver, an absolutely dynamic player. downfield presence, explosive, yards per catch machine. And then Concepcion, someone we saw in the ACC, says he was a true freshman getting it done. But you do lose Noah Thomas to Georgia. That size, kind of big X receiver, but you're replacing that size, I think, with probably just more speed and dynamic ability at that position, more run after catch. If you're a receiver, if you're a quarterback, like Marcel Reed, give him some easy throws, let him throw those screens and make big plays that way with guys like Concepcion who can get it done after the catch. Also, we talked about the length from the high school class. You see guys like Sam Mpemba from University of Georgia, TJ Searcy from UF. These are former highly rated players that are over 6'4" with some size to them. Tyler Onyedim from Iowa State, a veteran guy with some size and production. So they're getting bigger. Even a guy like Julian Humphrey, the corner they got from Georgia, who started that season for most of the season and then at the end of the year missed some time. I'd say missed some time, was benched, but has exceptional physical traits as far as size and straight line speed. Texas A&M hopes to cultivate those traits. These are not all finished products that they're getting in the portal or in high school, but guys that have the requisite, physical check marks that they can be developed.
So as we keep the list moving here, a program that if you did these rankings every year, they would essentially be top 3, it seems like every year. And that's the Georgia Bulldogs and Kirby Smart, number 2, 3 recruiting class in the country. Every one of these sites has it different, but it was a consensus top 3 class with 8 top 50 players in their recruiting class. And then you flip the receiver room completely, which was one of the worst in the country, really, as crazy as that sounds. But I think Bulldog fans would not disagree completely with that statement. And you get 2 completely different types of targets in Noah Thomas, your big body vertical threat, who I think it can really open up the field with his downfield ability for them. And then Zachariah Branch, who we've seen flashes of it, has had some injury issues, but one of the more dynamic talents in all of the country.
Yeah, I think what separates Georgia from, let's say, an Alabama or a Texas when we're talking about the top 5 off seasons is that Georgia really addressed their biggest need in the portal. So it wasn't like they signed a giant portal class like LSU or Auburn, but what they needed was wide receivers. You saw it last year, led the nation in drops. It was hard to watch at times for Carson Beck. He had his own struggles, but certainly the receiving core was a major contributing factor to this passing game, taking a big step back from the year prior when you had Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers. So you address that particular need. Got a big X receiver in Noah Thomas from Texas A&M. This guy that was just catching passes in the bowl. So it's not like he fell off. This guy was playing very, very well, poised for a big year, ends up going to Georgia to play with Gunnar Stockton and that crew of quarterbacks and giving them a big, big target. Of course, Zachariah Branch, a little bit of a setback this past year, was much more dynamic as a freshman, where he was not freshman All-America. He was an actual All-American as a returner. The returning kind of slipped a little bit. He was having more production as a receiver, but not as much as he wants. I think he sees Georgia as an opportunity to really break through and become that next level impact player. One of the most talented track athletes in the country coming out, 5-star player. A lot of Tyreek Hill comparisons earlier in his career. Would love to reignite those comps. So you had that taken care of in the portal. Not a huge portal class, some depth guys, but really focusing on that impact position, receiver. And then in high school, man, like you said, 8 of the top 50 players, but what jumps out to me, 4 of the top 5 players in the state of Georgia. Georgia is not a state that one school dominates because there's just so much competition for players from Alabama, Auburn, you name it. Every school is going to recruit in Georgia. So for the University of Georgia to land 4 of the top 5 players, including this first-round pick, Elijah Griffin, somebody that we saw in the Under Armour game absolutely dominate from Savannah, Georgia. The quickness to change the direction, the incredible production. Did against a lower level of competition in high school, but then you go to the Under Armour game and he's just as dominant. You see the physical traits. This looks every bit of your classic Georgia first-round pick. And Pete, it's easy to see when you talk about the 4 of the 5 positions, 4 of the 5 players in Georgia signing with Georgia. Look at the positions: defensive tackle, edge, offensive tackle, linebacker / edge with Zayden Walker. Does that sound like Georgia to you?
It sounds like Georgia, and it sounds like, just looking at the top of the NFL draft every year, exactly what Georgia does, and just helped the Eagles win a Super Bowl, quite frankly.
Yep, this formula doesn't miss. I mean, you look at Zayden Walker, certainly looks a lot like number 11 for the Georgia Bulldogs. So you see similarities between some of these guys and some of the players that have had tremendous success for Kirby Smart on the way to the first round of the draft.
So the number 2 team on this list here, as we keep going through it, the top 5 SEC off seasons in terms of talent acquisition, it's the number 1 portal class, but that's not going to be enough to get them the number 1 spot on our list. That's the LSU Tigers. So let's talk about the reasoning here, as they have an extremely impactful portal class, a bunch of guys who are coming in as big time players from previous places. And you have some young guys as well that you take chances on. But to me, you pair that with the fact that they get the DJ Pickett acquisition as the number 1 corner in the country. That's a very, very tough thing to say that they're not the number 1 team on this list. But
yeah, so to me, when I look at LSU, top 10 in both portal and recruiting, number 10 recruiting class, number 1 portal class. That's obviously strong. DJ Pick, I know you mentioned he's number 1 corner in the country. Obviously, that's every site has different rankings, right? So there'll be some, I'm sure there's people in the comments disputing that one because, maybe they're a fan of Oregon and Naeem Offord or Devin Sanchez up there in Ohio State. But he's got a claim. He's just really probably athlete, talk about top 10 athlete in America. He's definitely on that list. Almost 6'5", track speed, legitimate 4.4, 4.3 type speed, impact player, going to be developed by Coach Raymond. Excited to see him because he's so unique with his height and his length. Kind of reminds you of Tariq Woolen from originally from was it UTSA before he goes to the Seattle Seahawks and is one of the top young players at that position in the league. Has his ups and downs. His height's unique. His speed's unique, but he finds a way to make it work. Harlem Berry, the running back, local kid, New Orleans. They've produced guys like this in the past. These smaller, highly dynamic running backs. I think back when I watch this guy play, I think back to the late great Joe McKnight, who was an outstanding player in high school and going to USC. That's kind of what I see when I see a guy like Harlem Berry, the change of direction, the pure speed. He's just a super dynamic player, not the biggest guy in the world, but man, look at how quick and efficient he is in his cuts. And then when he turns on the juice, he can get to the corner and do a lot of things. So that'd be my comp for him is Joe McKnight, but this time LSU is able to keep him home. And I can see this guy just, again, he's so light on his feet.
Yeah.
The cuts are
it looks like he's floating. Yeah.
He really does. And I think that, there's guys that are fast, there's guys that are quick, but the ability to string it together effortlessly, look at that. This guy is somewhat, he's the kind of guy that if he's put in a position to succeed by Brian Kelly, who we know is a great offensive coach, you got Nussmeier quarterback, so the passing game is going to be a feature. We'll get to the receivers they added in a second. This is someone I think that year one could open some eyeballs making plays like this, in front of all the fans there in the SEC.
Well, and it's generally a plug and play position, like you said. If he's put in that position to succeed, basically, if they play him and if they give him the ball.
Yeah, and this is a guy you got to get the ball. I didn't think LSU did a good enough job in the running game and just complimenting their quarterback last year. They had a sensational quarterback. They had some good receivers, not quite what they've had in the past. But really, I thought Nussmeier was too reliant on Nussmeier last year. You got to help him out. And this is a guy that can take a short Nussmeier pass to the house, along with some other guys, man. Because you look at the rest of this portal class, which 16 players, a huge, huge class. The names that jump out to me are names that are going to help Garrett Nussmeier have a lot of success.
Right. So, the Pat Paytons of the world would come to mind.
Well, on the other side of the ball, for sure. And, cornerback, Mansour Delane, Jakeem Jackson. These are guys that Mansour Delane from Virginia Tech, Jakeem Jackson getting reunited with Coach Raymond coming from Florida, a kid from the Central Florida area. It's got great size and speed. Those guys are going to help the defensive side, which has been the story with LSU, right, the past couple of years. But to me, I'm looking at the guys who are going to help Garrett Nussmeier potentially make a run at the Heisman and the #1 overall pick. And that's Josh Thompson, interior offensive lineman, 6'5", 301 from Northwestern. Braylon Moore, another interior offensive lineman from Virginia Tech, 6'3", 303. These are both high 4-star type transfers, big-time transfers. And you look at the wide receiver position, Nick Anderson from Oklahoma, somebody who really, really flashed as a young player, size and speed with him. Barian Brown from Kentucky, one of the fastest players in the SEC, probably the best kick returner, I would say, maybe in the country, but someone who's had success making big plays in the passing game is going to love playing with a quarterback like Nussmeier. So you add that kind of talent. I mean, look at the rating. These are some of the highest rated players in the portal. They're right there in the interior offensive line. And then you add the receivers as well. That's going to make Nussmeier's life a lot easier.
Without a doubt. I mean, this is it's a loaded class. And then defensively, they have a ton of guys who are instant impact players, without a doubt, that were very, very productive at their previous stops.
Yep. And it's still of upside. I don't think Patrick Payton's shown you the best he can do in terms of certainly the last year. This is a guy who looked like a first-round pick, a native of Miami, Florida, goes to Florida State, wins ACC Rookie of the Year, looks like the future there. Very Greg Rousseau-ish in terms of his length, played safety in high school as well, from Miami, Florida also. But he was someone that I think hit a wall this past season, didn't do well enough against the run. The weight maybe didn't come on the right way. 2-10 team, so that the vibe around the team wasn't exactly helping anybody. So he's someone that you want to get more out of. So he's, I'd say, an upside guy, just like a Jakeem Jackson with his size and speed. Had moments for Florida, but hasn't shown everything he can do. I think upside with him. The receivers, Barian Brown, Nick Anderson, yes, they've had production, but I think there's still more there with those guys. So a lot of these guys, you're not just counting on them being instant impact guys. You're counting on getting more out of them, almost like a high school recruit that you're developing and tapping into their potential.
Now, the #1 team on our list here for the top 5 off seasons in the SEC, Auburn and Hugh Freeze. It's a pivotal year for him. We understand that there's a lot of pressure on this upcoming season. Top 10 recruiting class, grab 1 million quarterbacks. So if they don't fix the QB situation with this haul that they brought in, then it's never going to happen. And the portal haul, not only do you get the quarterbacks, but you get weapons around that to really solidify and hopefully fix the offense for good.
Yeah, this was my favorite offseason in the SEC because it was so targeted to what they needed. So you look at and what they wanted to do, right? There was a purpose, there was a plan, and it was executed. Whether it works, we'll find out, but there was a clear plan. #7 recruiting class in the country, 10 of the top 14 players in Alabama. None of these guys went to the Crimson Tide. So 10 of the 14 went to Auburn. The other 4 went across the country. But you're landing guys like Malik Autry from Opelika, Alabama, your classic Auburn war daddy, big dude, athletic, extremely physical, somebody who just looks like an Auburn type defensive tackle, like a Derek Brown, right? Thick, explosive. Just look at, again, you don't have to guess which guy he is on the highlight reel. They don't need to highlight him to see which one he is. He looks like an instant impact day 1 player in the SEC. It's a position that's hard to play early. But I think with Malik Autry, he's going to help that defense from day 1. And he has a body type and a profile that's just, you're not going to get this in the portal. You're not going to get this, necessarily through finding sleepers. You got to win recruiting battles. You got to keep guys in state. And that's what they did here with Malik Autry.
You said you're not going to find it in the portal. If this guy ever was in the portal, he'd cost a lot of money.
Look at a Walter Nolan, what he costs, right? It happens occasionally, but when it does, like you said, it's extremely, extremely expensive. Look, high school is expensive too with guys like this. But I think players of this, you look at the NFL draft, right? All the defensive linemen, they're going to get drafted here in the draft in a few months. Those guys were all, for the most part, high school signees, 4-star, 5-star players that went to big schools, right? Just go up and down the board. The guys that are going to go in this very defensive lineman heavy draft, high in the draft. So Malik Autry is someone who, if all goes well in 3 years, he'll have Auburn under his name when he shakes the commissioner's hand.
And then we've also done a pretty full breakdown on that quarterback room. But you look at Deuce Knight at the quarterback spot, and that has to be, if you're an Auburn fan, what you're most excited about looking at moving forward.
Oh man, from Lucedale, Mississippi, this guy. I mean, the highlights are spectacular. His testing is off the charts. I saw him in person at the OT 7-on-7 in Tampa, Florida. He is just a big lefty, and his athleticism is just something very unique. I'm not going to say Cam Newton because that's just so rare, but he's the closest thing that I've seen to that in quite a while because of the size, because of the burst, which is verified in his testing, in his track and field numbers, his jumping events, what he does on the basketball court. And then you watch him in the Alabama-Mississippi All-Star game, which is an all-star game, something that's very hard for quarterbacks to succeed. And he looked like an alien in that game. Long runs just like this one, long passes, great arm strength. Plus, he's a scholar athlete as well. Extremely, extremely smart player. So you talk about the guy with the upside to really change your program. And Auburn, we know what Cam Newton did for that program. I think this guy, I'm not saying he's going to be a Cam Newton impact, but he has program-changing physical talent.
You got to be careful. Got to be careful with this one, man. There was already a controversy. Cam was not happy that Deuce Knight was wearing his number 2 on his visit. Cam said that Deuce Knight hadn't asked him if he could wear the number. So already some controversy brewing there. This was a few weeks back, or maybe a month plus ago, that I saw that story. So hopefully they've worked it out. I just looked it up. I haven't seen any update on it again. So we'll see what happens there. But might want to be careful with the comparison, man. I don't think Cam would like that very much.
Cam's becoming a hater in his old age, I got to say, with his podcast. But one of the best players, maybe the best player I've ever seen at the college level. Also, another Alabama guy that you're adding from the state, from Alabaster, Alabama. That's edge Jared Smith, another 5-star guy, somebody I saw in the Under Armour game, immediately stood out with his size. It's an all-star game. So these are 5-star players, 4-star players. There's a lot of big players. That's not something that's unusual necessarily. But this guy looked over 6'6", over 240 pounds, and like a light 240, meaning this guy is going to be, I think that might have been underselling what he actually weighed. But when the weight comes on, Aldon Smith type physical tools for a Jared Smith. And that's just a high school class. The portal class, as you can see, Pete, preloaded.
Yeah, and I mentioned that obviously they get the quarterback in Jackson Arnold from Oklahoma. They bring in Deuce Knight from the high school class. They bring in Ashton Daniels from Stanford, a QB. But then this is rated by top portal additions or subtractions from their class. But Eric Singleton, wide receiver, offensive player. Xavier Chaplin from Virginia Tech, tackle. Horatio Fields, wide receiver. Mason Murphy from SC as a tackle. So your first 4 players there before you even get to the quarterback are guys who are going to help your QB in the first place. So it was a real concerted effort to get impact players on the offensive side of the ball here.
Yeah, and premium positions. So you look at Mason Murphy, right? University of Southern California, a powerhouse school that you're trying to take a player from. They don't want to lose protection for Jordan Mayaba. They don't want to lose protection. Sorry, for Jaden Mayaba. They don't want to lose protection for potentially Hussein Longstreet. So they want tackles too. But you go and take Mason Murphy, 6'5", 315, 4-star transfer, very talented on the outside. And then Xavier Chaplin, probably, if not the best tackle on the market, certainly in that conversation with guys like Isaiah World going to Oregon. 6'7", 325 from Virginia Tech, an absolute beast, originally from South Carolina. You get him to go down to Auburn, to the Plains. Both those guys are going to protect whoever wins this quarterback battle. And then in terms of throwing the football, Eric Singleton, best wide receiver in the portal, track star, elite speed, about 4.4, 4.3 type speed, not a small guy, over 190 pounds, has some sturdiness to his game, can catch the ball and make plays, going into what presumes to be more of a passing offense than what he had at Georgia Tech. Horatio Fields, somebody who I don't think showed all of his ability at Wake Forest. He has a lot more talent, I think, than he showed at that school with his numbers. That's why he was rated so high as a portal transfer. Of course, you have guys on campus, huge wide receiver class last year, led by Cam Coleman, who's going to be an All-America type player, potentially. So whoever the quarterback is, and we know the names, right? Deuce Knight, we mentioned, he's probably going to be third because of his age, but Jackson Arnold, looking to be like a Bo Nix in reverse, where he goes to Auburn to kind of find his stride. That would be certainly a coup for the Tigers after losing Bo Nix and seeing him blossom elsewhere. And then Ashton Daniels, more of a running quarterback from Stanford, played games in the ACC, won games in the ACC, an experience option. See if his throwing can come along, see how he takes to this system here, and with Coach Freeze, which could be more favorable to his game.
I think there's a very realistic world where we see all three of them, though, because Ashton Daniels coming in there as a vet, his skill set as a runner, I think that he wasn't coming in there not to see the field at all this year, whether he's the starter or not. And then Deuce Knight coming in as a talented freshman. You're going to have to start getting him into the game one way or another just to see what you've got. And with that athletic ability, he can help you out this year. I really believe he can. To what degree, we'll see. But if you're an Auburn fan, you've got to be really excited about this offseason. And they take the #1 spot in our list for the top 5 SEC offseasons.
Can't wait to watch them in spring, see how these young guys play, these new arrivals play. It's going to be a very, very exciting month of March. We'll be prepping you all the next few weeks, right? Everything you need to know heading into spring, kind of coming out of the portal season and coming out of recruiting season as we gear up for what never ends, right? Which is college football in the Southeastern Conference.
Keep it locked here on Group Chat Sports. This is Group Chat Football Live. Remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel. If you enjoyed content like this, we'll see you guys soon.